the Dragon Table, I'll be going over a tutorial on how to play Kingsburg. It's a Euro game that is resource management based, but there's also some worker placement if you consider your dice to be workers. Let's take a look. This is Kingsburg set up for a 3-player game. This game plays fine for 2 to 5 players. If you play a 2-player game, you have to have one set of kind of like dummy dice out that will be involved in the rolling and the worker placement phase, because otherwise it's just kind of too open with just 2 people. So everyone has their own board that has a list of all sorts of different buildings on it and the materials that are needed to build each building. And I'll show a close-up of this in a little bit. Every player has 3 dice in their color. They also have these little discs in their color that they'll be using to place and to show once they've built a building. Everyone puts one of their markers on the 0 spot of the victory point track. This is going to be the turn order track, and everyone just has their markers near it right now because it's going to be determined by the die roll at the beginning of the turn. Everyone also puts a marker on the 0 of the military track. And we also have resources. We have wood, gold, and stone. And then we also have these little chips that have a picture of a little die on it with a 2. And what that means is if you get one of these, you can use it with a die to influence an advisor, which is what mainly happens during the game, is you're influencing all these advisors that are out here. And if you get one of these, it can let you add 2 to your die roll, and exactly 2, and you can only use 1 at a time. So it can give you a little bit more freedom in choosing where to place your dice. We also have a track over here that denotes the year. This takes place over a course of 5 years. This stack of cards are the enemies that we'll face at the end of each year. And down at the bottom is the track of the year itself. We start in the first phase, which is like pre-spring, kind of. Then the second phase is a productive phase, and it's spring. And then we go to the end of spring, and then we go to summer, which is a productive phase. Then we go to the end of summer, then we have autumn, and then we have winter. Or we actually have the end of autumn, and then we have winter. And winter is when we're attacked by enemies. And part of the strategy of the game is you can choose whether or not you're going to build up your defenses against the enemies, or if you're going to say, well, I'll just take the possible penalty that comes. The nice thing about the enemies is that on the card itself, there's a different enemy for each year. So for year 1, below the 1, it says 2 to 4. That's the possible strength of the enemy. So you know that this can only be an enemy of strength 2, 3, or 4. The following year, it's 3, 4, or 5, then 4, 5, or 6, then 5, 6, or 7, and then the final year, it could be a 7, 8, or a 9 strength enemy. And you do not know what enemy is going to be coming for you at the end of the year unless you play your dice to influence certain advisors that let you peek at the enemy. So something a little bit different will happen during each of these seasons that we progress through. But during each productive phase, it's the same. Everyone rolls their dice. Whoever rolls the highest gets to go first, and then the next highest gets to go second, and the lowest roll gets to go third. So it's always determined by the roll of your dice, and it'll be denoted by the markers on the turn order track. And then you use those same dice to influence advisors, and you influence an advisor by putting your dice on them. For instance, if I wanted to influence the number, say number 10 advisor, I would put dice equal to that number on the advisor. Now, no one else can play on that advisor for that turn. That's one of the perks of going first. But you also want to look at the other dice that people have and plan ahead, because it is possible for you to end up being blocked. If, say, this person played on the 2, and all I have left is a 2, I'm not going to be able to play this final die this turn, unless I have, say, one of these chips that would let me add to it, and then I could play on a 4. So there's definitely some strategy involved in picking which advisors that you're going to influence, based on your die roll and based on the die roll of the other people around you. Now let's go over what each of the advisors can give you, because they're each very different and they each definitely have benefits. The first advisor is the jester. He gives you 1 victory point. So when in doubt, if you're left with just a 1 on your die and you don't have anything else to do with it, it's never a bad idea to get a victory point. One of the things that you'll find in this game is that all the victory points are gained during the game. There is very, very, very minimal end game scoring, if any. There's really only one building, the cathedral, that will let you score points at the end of the game. Goods aren't even counted for victory points at the end of the game. They're only used as a tiebreaker. So be very conscious that you need to be getting victory points during the game. And you get those from building buildings, or by taking advantage of some of the benefits of the buildings, or by using the jester, for instance. The second one is the squire. He allows you to take 1 gold from the supply. Number 3 is the architect. He lets you take 1 wood. Number 4 is the merchant, who lets you take either 1 gold or 1 wood. Number 5 is the sergeant. It lets you recruit 1 soldier. And what that means is you would be allowed to move up your marker up 1 on the military track. And then during the phase where you fight enemies, you would have a +1 against the enemies, in addition to any other military resources that you had built up. Number 6 is the alchemist. He allows you to turn in 1 of your goods for 2 of the other types of goods. So for instance, if you turn in a gold, you get a wood and a stone. Number 7 is the astronomer. You take 1 good of your choice and you take 1 of the die chips. Number 8 is the treasurer. You get 2 gold. Number 9 is the master hunter. You get either 1 gold and 1 wood, or 1 stone and 1 wood. Number 10 is the general. You recruit 2 soldiers, so you would move up 2 on the military track. And this symbol here, this weird looking pink guy, means you get to look at the enemy. And you only get to do it once, so make sure you remember, when you pick up the card, remember what it is, because if you look at it in spring and then you forget what it is in winter, it's not going to help you. So remember what it is when you look at it. Number 11 is the swordsmith. You can get either 1 stone and 1 gold, or 1 stone and 1 wood. Number 12 is the duchess. You get to take 2 goods of your choice and you get a die token. Number 13 is the champion. You get to take 3 stone. Number 14 is the smuggler. You pay 1 victory point, so you would move 1 back on the track from wherever you were and get 3 goods of your choice. Number 15 is the inventor. You get 1 good of each type, so 1 gold, 1 wood, and 1 stone. Number 16 is the wizard. You get 4 gold. Number 17 is my personal favorite. Hard to roll that high, but it is possible, and if you roll a 17, this is generally the spot that you want to take. This is the queen. She gives you 2 goods of your choice, 3 victory points, and you get to look at the enemy for that year. Number 18 is the king. You get 1 gold, 1 wood, 1 stone, and you get to move forward 1 on the military track. So those are all of the advisors. Now let's take a closer look at one of the player boards. I'm not going to go over every single building that you can build. I just want to give you an idea of, especially at the beginning, what your choices are. So this is the player board. In order to build any of these buildings, you must have the goods listed inside of this circle. And you have to build in the column 1 first before you can build the adjacent building in column 2. For instance, if you want to build the market, you have to build the inn first. If you want to build the stone wall, you have to build the palisade and the stable first. And what you do is you influence advisors, you get the goods you need, and then you turn the back end and say, I turn in 2 wood and I build a palisade. And then I would place my token there to show that I built it. Now the palisade doesn't give me any victory points, but if I had gotten, say, a gold and a stone and built a guard tower, that would give me 1 victory point. So they're listed right here, what you get when you build that building. In addition, each building gives you something extra. This is, obviously, you get fairly high victory points from building the buildings in the top row. Plus you get additional benefits as listed underneath the buildings. Like I say, I'm not going to go over all of them because there are a lot to choose from. And the track that you choose can be different each time. If you're worried about enemies, you can build a guard tower, because that's going to give you +1 in battle. Palisade will also give you +1 in battle. If you get a chance to look at the enemy so you know what you're fighting, and you find out that it's zombies, the palisade gives you +2 versus zombies. So that's good to know. And the barricade only doesn't give you anything in battle unless you're fighting goblins. So again, if you've had the chance to look and see what the enemy is and you know it's goblins, you would get +1 versus goblins if you build a barricade. One thing I do want to point out is if you build a crane, then you can pay 1 less gold when you're building anything in column 3. So one of the things that I kind of tend to do when I play the game is I tend to try and build a crane before I build anything in column 3, just because it makes it cheaper. The inn is nice because at the end of summer each year, you will get one of these little dice tokens. You just have to remember to get it. And the market is nice because once per season, you can influence any advisor whose value is 1 point higher or lower than the sum of the dice you're currently using, as long as it's not being influenced by someone else. So for instance, if you had rolled, say, a 14, but you wanted the 15, you could say, if you had the market, you could say, I'm going to use the market to influence number 15 instead of number 14, as long as no one else had played there. And that's how the player board works. Now I'm going to go through, kind of quick as I can, simulated run through of the first year so that you can see how the game actually plays and what happens in each season. The season that you start in, whoever has the fewest number of buildings will get to roll the bonus white die during the spring productive season. At the beginning of the game, no one can get that benefit. If there's a tie, say maybe the next round, if there's a tie, whoever has the fewest goods will get the white die. If there's a tie for the fewest number of buildings and the fewest number of goods, as there is right now, the king aids everyone, and everyone can take 1 free resource from the supply of their choice. I believe I'll take 1 gold to start with. And let's see, the player on my left, he's thinking about what he's going to do, and I believe he's going to take a wood. And I believe that our player over here is going to take a stone. So everyone's chosen something different. And now we move into spring. So we move the token into spring. And now, if I had 3 hands, everyone would roll their dice at the same time. I can't do that, so we're just going to roll the dice. Okay, so red rolled 14, blue rolled 12, and green rolled 11. So red will go first, and then blue, and then green. That's how that's decided. And so when I'm making my choice of where I'm going to put my my tokens, or where I'm going to put my dice, I want to pay attention to what other people have rolled. So no fair covering the dice with your hand. I also recommend once you've rolled your dice and you've figured out how much they are, that you keep your hands off of them. Because it's really easy to kind of play with your dice, and before you know it, you've accidentally rolled it over, you forget what you had, or whatever. These are the dice that you need to use this whole turn, so don't mess with them, don't play with them, leave them alone until it's time to put them out. So I have a lot of choices. I could plan on trying to do a 3, a 5, and a 6. I could do all at once, and I could go into and put it on 14 and lose a point right away. I could do an 8, I could do 9, I could do 11. I have a lot of choices. But I think I took a gold first because I was thinking about building an inn. And in order to build an inn, I need a piece of wood in order to do that. So that's one thing that I'm thinking about. And I also then want to think ahead about what I might want to build next. It's a little risky, but I'm gonna play on 9. The reason it's risky is because all I have left now is this 5 die, and I don't have anything that I can influence, like change the value of the die. And he has a 5 that he could play. This player also has a 5 that he could play by putting the 4 and the 1 together. Because now it goes round robin. So now blue will take a turn. And I believe that blue was going to be building a palisade. So he was going to need wood as well. And he rolled a 12 total. And he actually likes the 12 spot. The Duchess is pretty nice. He's going to get a nice benefit from that, and he's going to be able to get goods of his choice. So he's done. And now green is up. And green I know needs gold, because I think that green was going to try to build a guard tower. And he can actually do that by... Well, there are a couple different things he could do. He could obviously play all of his die on the 11 spot and be able to get the goods that he needs. But he's going to be in control, kind of because I have to play on a 5. If he chooses not to play on a 5, what he could do is he could say, well, I'll play on the 7. He knows he'll get 1 good, and he'll also get a die token. And then he knows that I can't play on the 4, so he'll be able to play on a 4. So he'll be able to get 2 goods and a die token. Whereas if he played over here, he would only get 2 goods. So he's taking advantage of the situation, which is what you do in this game. So I'm obviously going to play a 5 there. And then this guy's done with his dice. And he's going to play his 4 here. So now that that's done, we now take the dice back in the order from lowest to highest. So number 4 is going to take his back, and he gets to choose a gold or a wood, and he is choosing a gold. I get to take my 5 back, and that means I get to move up 1 on the military track. Now green gets to take his dice back. He gets a die token, which he can use in future rounds, and he gets a good of his choice. And I believe he's going to take some wood, because that's usually pretty useful. And now I get mine. So I can choose either a gold and a wood or a stone and a wood. And I think that I'm going to choose a gold and a wood. And now this guy gets to take all of his dice back, and he gets a die token. He also gets 2 goods of his choice. And we know he wanted to build a palisade, so for sure he's going to get that. And I believe he's also going to take gold. Now, at the end of this part of the phase, everyone has a chance to build, and you build in order. You can only build 1 building at a time. There's a situation where you can build an extra building, and I will explain that when we get to it, but for the most part, you can only build 1 building. So I'm still the first player, so I get to build first. And I'm going to turn in 1 wood and 1 gold to build the inn. And that means I don't get any points right now for building it, but at the end of summer each year, if I remember, I get to get a free die token, which is nice. Now blue gets to build, and I believe that blue is going to build a palisade. He's going to turn in 2 of his wood. He's going to build a palisade, and that will give him +1 in battle, +2 versus zombies. And now our friend in green can build, and he is going to build a guard tower for 1 stone and 1 gold. That will give him +1 in battle, and it gives him +1 victory points. So he is currently in the lead with a roaring 1 point. And now we move into the next phase. In this phase, it's called the King's Reward, and whoever has the most buildings is rewarded with an extra victory point. We all have one building, which means we all get one victory point. So if you're tied, each person gets one victory point. Yay, we're all on the board now. And now we move into summer, which is going to be our next productive phase. And we'll do the same thing. We're going to roll dice, we're going to get goods, we're going to build buildings. So I'm going to roll my dice. He's going to roll his dice. He's going to roll his dice. Oh, he rolled horribly. That looks like one of my rolls. Okay, so I rolled 10. Blue rolled 11, or blue rolled 10 as well. And green rolled 4. Now because blue and red are tied, the person who had the higher position to start with will maintain that position. So we're actually going to end up staying in the same place because we both rolled 10. Here's where it can get a little dicey. These guys each have a die token. So they have a little bit more flexibility than I do in terms of deciding where I'm going to go. I think what I'm going to do is I'll risk it. I'm going to, oops, or fortunately, I rolled it back to exactly what it was. I'm going to put my die on 7 to start with because I'm going to plan on trying to build a guard tower because I feel like I want a little bit more military strength. Our friend over here wants to build an inn. So he is looking to get some wood, and he could actually do that by placing 2 dice on the master hunter spot, and still have. He's got some options now because not only does he have this 1 left over, but he's also got this 2 spots, so he could go either way with where he puts that. Our poor green guy who only rolled 4. Has very few choices. I feel bad for him, but not that bad. If this was a real game, I would just be laughing. He could go with a 5 because he could use his dice, and then he would get some military, but he wouldn't be able to build anything. He could block me by putting his dice on the 3. Why I oughta. And that might be his best choice. Well, what does he want to build? He wants to build an inn, so he needs money. So he is actually going to place 2 here, because he needs gold. I will be able to place my 3 here. This guy is actually going to, he can't, now he's in a position where he can't use his die token because I took the 3 spot, so he's going to take a jester spot. And for his last turn, he would be blocked because both the 1 and the 2 are taken, but he's got this die token, which he'll place with his dice to take the 4 spot. And that's how you use the die tokens. So now we take them back in order from lowest to highest. So blue gets 1 point. Green gets a gold. Red gets a wood. Now this die token goes away because it's been used. And green gets to choose either gold or wood. And I believe he's going to choose wood. And now I get to choose, well, I get one of these tokens, and I get to choose the good of my choice. And I think I'm going to choose gold. And now blue, we know that he was looking at building an inn, so he's definitely going to get wood, and he can get either stone or gold in addition to that. And I think that he is going to pick up a gold. And now it's the end of the productive season, so we can build. I'm going to build a statue. And the reason I'm doing that is just to get some points. I know I originally said I was going to do something different. I changed my mind. So 1, 2, 3. Now blue has a chance to build, and he's going to build an inn. And green gets to build, and I think that green is also going to build an inn. They're pretty handy. And now it's the end of the summer phase, so everyone who has an inn gets a die token. So that means all of us. We each get a die token. Now you notice that blue and I both have 2 die tokens. You can use both of them on the same turn, but they would have to be split between 2 different advisors. You couldn't use, say, 2 of these with a 3 to make a 7. But I could, on the same turn, use this with a 3 and this with a 7. So now we move into the King's Envoy phase. In this phase, whoever has the fewest number of buildings would get the King's Envoy. In this case, we all have the same number of buildings, and there's no tiebreaker on this one. Either someone has the fewest number of buildings or they don't. You don't get the King's Envoy if you don't look at goods or any of that. It's just buildings. If you get the King's Envoy, it will let you do one of 2 things. You can either use it, and you would take this little guy and put it with your stuff. It can do one of 2 things. Either it will let you place dice where people have already placed dice. For instance, if someone placed die on a 7 and I wanted to play there, I could use the King's Envoy to place my die there as well. Alternatively, you could use the King's Envoy to build 2 buildings at the end of a productive phase instead of just 1. In either case, if you use the King's Envoy, it then gets returned to its spot. It also gets returned to its spot if you make it all the way around to the next year and into this phase without using it. So you can't just hold on to it for multiple years. And in this case, we all have the same number of buildings, so no one gets the King's Envoy, and we move straight into fall. Now, fall is the last season that you get to prepare for winter. So it's your one last chance to kind of get some military might if you're concerned about being able to beat the enemies. What will happen when we get to winter is we are going to roll one of these white dice that will tell us how much help the king is sending to help us fight off the enemies. So at the very least, we're going to get at least 1 extra guy to help us fight off the enemies. So if you have at least 3 military might somehow, between a combination of your buildings and this track, then you're for sure going to be safe. You're not going to win the fight, so you wouldn't get any benefits from it, but you wouldn't lose the fight, so you wouldn't lose anything from it either. So you stand a pretty good chance the first year of maybe not even needing the military might, but it is still a risk. It could be a 4 strength enemy. I don't know. I haven't seen it. So it's just something to keep in mind when you're going to build for this phase. So same thing happens. Everybody rolls. So red rolls a 14, blue rolls an 11, and green does much better this time. He rolls an 11 also. And again, we're going to stay in the same turn order because red is 14, blue and green roll the same number, but blue is going to stay ahead of green because that's the position he already had. So I could take my turn first. What do I want to do? One thing that I could do is I could use one of my die tokens and play on the 10 spot. This would give me 2 extra military, and it would let me look at the card. The problem with doing that in the first phase is that that's a lot of military. That would give me 3 total. Again, but that would make me safe. I wouldn't have to worry about building any more. But military gets reset at the end of each year. So I wouldn't get to keep those into the following year. I'm really thinking about wanting to build something that's going to actually last into the future seasons. as nice as it would be to be able to look at that card and know what I'm getting, or know what we're getting ourselves into, I would rather build something that I know is going to stand the test of time. So I think what I'm going to do, and this is not often recommended, but I think I'm actually going to play on the Alchemist. The reason it's not often recommended is usually you can use your dice to get more goods than just by doing that. What I'm looking at doing is turning my wood for a stone and a gold, which will let me build a guard tower. So that's my thinking is there. So now blue gets to go, and he has a palisade and an inn. He has 1 gold, so he could look at getting some stone and build a guard tower. You just have to remember that the game is not all about military strength. There are other factors to be concerned with as well. Like, per se, points. I'll put his dice on a 7. And green, what does green want to do? Green's got wood, so he's probably wanting to build a palisade. And thinking about getting as many other goods as he can. So maybe he wants to play all of his guys here at the weaponsmith. So then it'd be my turn. I could play on the 8, but I think I'm going to get more out of it if I split up my dice. I was originally thinking maybe I could play on the 7 because I could put a 2 with the 5, but I can't do that now because he played on the 7. Maybe I will just take the gold. And he's got a 4. He cannot use one of his die tokens to make it a 6 because I already played on the 6, so he can just play on the 4. All right, so now everyone's got their dice out, so we take them back. Blue can get either a wood or a gold. And I believe that he is going to take a gold. And then I get to transmute at the Alchemist. And I'm going to turn my wood into gold and stone. Now I do want to point out that, especially for the Alchemist, it does make a difference the order that you're taking your dice back in. Because I'm going to get gold later on. But that gold can't be used at the Alchemist this turn. So if you play there thinking that, oh, well, I'll just take these dice first and then I'll go to the Alchemist, you can't do that. You have to go in numerical order. So now our blue friend is going to take his stone and he's going to take an extra die token, which he's racking up there. And then I'm going to get 2 gold because I miss money bags over here. And green is going to take a wood and a stone. And now we get to build. And I'm going to build the guard tower. That'll give me +1 in battle, and right now it's going to give me +1 victory points. Our friend over here is going to do the same thing. Blue is also going to build a guard tower. So he gets another +1. And green is going to build a palisade. So he turns in his 2 wood to build a palisade. You get 0 points for that, but +1 in battle, +2 versus zombies. Woo-woo. And that is the end of that phase. So now we move into basically like the end of autumn. At this point, if you're concerned about not having enough military strength, you can turn in 2 goods of any type for 1 move forward on the military track. So in other words, it's not permanent. So it's something that you do usually later in the game when maybe you've got some extra resources, or there's a building called the barracks, which is in the third column. And if you build the barracks, you can pay 1 good per soldier to recruit in phase 7, instead of having to pay 2 goods like normal. So blue doesn't have enough goods, green doesn't have enough goods. I could pay 2 gold for 1 soldier, but I don't really want to, because I've got 1 military strength and I've got +1 in battle with the guard tower. I'm going to take my chances. Might be stupid, we'll find out. Because now we're going to move into winter. And the enemy will be revealed. And it is zombies of strength 4. Great. Let me see if I can show you this card up close. So this is our enemy card. The top left corner shows you the strength of the enemy. Right here is the penalty you get if you lose to this enemy, which in this case is -2 victory points. If you beat this enemy, you get +1 victory points. So everybody has to go up against some zombies, but we are going to get help from the king. So in the first player, whoever was the last first player, rolls a die. And we get 4. That's great. That means everyone is going to beat the zombies. So I have 1 here and +1 in battle for the guard tower. So obviously that gives me enough to beat it. So I get +1 point for beating the zombies. Blue has +1 for the guard tower. He has a palisade, which gives him +2 against zombies. He's already got 3. +4 is 7, so he wins and he gets a point against the zombies. And green is the same thing. So he will also get a point. So everyone was very successful this turn. And now this gets put away because we're done with it for this game. You move up a year into year 2. You move this token back up to the first phase, which is the King's Aid phase. And you start all over again. You do that 5 times, and at the end of the 5th year, whoever has the most points wins. Like I said, there's no endgame scoring per se. There's 1 building, there's a cathedral. It's in column 4 at the very top. At the end of the game, you score 1 extra victory point for every 2 goods you own. There is no other building in the base game that will let you score extra points. There are some things that are different in the expansion, which is called To Forge a Realm, that change up the game. I like the expansion. I think it's cool. It adds some extra new buildings. It adds some character cards so that you have some specific abilities. And that adds some endgame scoring. But for the most part, it's still just during the game, whoever gets the most points wins. That's the only real kind of flaw, I would say, with the game, is that you can sometimes get somebody who just continually rolls really, really well and kind of takes off on the victory point track because they get a lot of goods, build a lot of buildings, and they just take off. Now, the way that they've made the game to kind of counteract that is by letting the person with the fewest buildings roll an extra die in spring, and then by letting whoever has the fewest buildings get the royal envoy after the summer phase. And that gives them an advantage to try and catch up. But for the most part, it's just a race during the game to get victory points. But like I showed you with that zombie card, you can lose victory points if you're not prepared for the military aspect of it. I should also mention that military gets reset at the end of the round. Don't forget to do that. You don't get to keep your whatever military you get on the track. You don't get to keep during the next year. But that's pretty much it. I really like the idea of rolling dice and your dice kind of being your worker placement, because it means you can strategize, but only so much. It helps if you can get these die tokens. It also helps if you can build the market, because then you can influence one higher or one lower if you need to, and give you more options. Obviously, in a 5-player game, it is very, very common for you to get blocked out and not be able to use all of your dice. You might end up with 1 die that you can't use just because so many spots are taken. But that's pretty much it. I think it's a fun little game. It doesn't take that long to play. I'd say 45 minutes to an hour to play. And it's fun to build your little buildings and get your little goods and influence advisors and try and outthink your opponents a little bit. So there's the randomness that's introduced with the dice, but it's still a strategic game. So that's Kingsburg. Thanks for visiting the Dragon Table. I'll see you next time.